native rollups means that Ethereum just deploys a bunch of rollups themselves. They would have the full trust and the full brand essentially of Ethereum behind them, and they would be developed in a way that's highly interoperable with L1.
Hi everyone, welcome to Unchained, your no-hype resource for all things crypto. I'm your host, Laura Shin, author of The Cryptopians. I started covering crypto 9 years ago, and as the senior editor of Forbes, was the first mainstream reporter to cover cryptocurrency full-time. This is the November 19th, 2024 episode of Unchained. Polkadot is the original and leading Layer 0 blockchain with over 2,000 plus developers. And the Polkadot 2.0 upgrade will be a massive accelerator for the ecosystem, making it faster, more secure, and adaptable. Perfect for GameFi and DeFi to build, grow, and scale. Join the community at polkadot.network/ecosystem/community. Robinhood Wallet, Robinhood's DeFi mobile app, takes no fees on same-chain and cross-chain swaps. Use Arbitrum's Layer 2 to swap with low network fees in just a few taps. Other fees may apply. Download on iOS or Android today. Overwhelmed managing crypto investments? Meet iYield, a free financial planning tool for crypto natives with automatic DeFi yield tracking. Unlike portfolio trackers, iYield provides a complete financial view of assets, debts, income, and expenses in crypto and fiat. Ditch the spreadsheets and take control at iYield.com. Today's guest is Martin Köppelmann, co-founder and CEO of Gnosis. Welcome, Martin.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hello.
You gave a talk at DevCon about how you believe that Ethereum should deploy 128 native zero-knowledge Layer 2s. And this, created quite a stir. But before we get into your proposal, why don't we start with what problems you were trying to solve?
Yeah, so I think the current Ethereum scaling roadmap is only accomplishing parts of its goals. So, the history was, there was initially the idea to have sharding. So kind of say, okay, we have Ethereum, but then we basically just have many versions of it and they communicate nicely together. That never, couldn't really figure out how to build that. So the approach now since a couple of years is the so-called roll-up centric approach, where you have Ethereum, but then you have roll-ups. So roll-ups or layer 2s built on top. And that has been a success in the sense that there are now many roll-ups and they are being used. But I would argue they are only loosely connected to Ethereum. So essentially they are just separate chains that have some connection to Ethereum. And what I'm proposing is something that is much stronger connected to Ethereum and where for a developer it feels much more like one chain. And kind of an obvious example is liquidity fragmentation. So if you today start a new rollup, then, for example, all the tokens, they don't have liquidity, so you cannot trade them there. So you have to build up your own liquidity. You have to have kind of copies of, first you need to deploy Uniswap contracts or other DEXs. Then you probably also want money markets, so something like Aave, and kind of in a way you have to replicate everything that Ethereum has and then build up your own liquidity. And in an alternative approach, you could ideally just tap into or kind of natively communicate with Ethereum, but still have scaling benefits, and that's what this proposal tries to address.
All right, so tell us what your solution is.
Yeah, so rollups today, again, are somewhat separate chains that have some form of how you can communicate with Ethereum and most importantly, bridge assets there. But other than that, they operate fairly independent. So yes, there are some mechanisms that the rollup eventually finalizes or its state on Ethereum, and there are ways that you can include a transaction from Ethereum to the rollup, but in general, kind of they can progress differently. So there's a rollup, and that they usually have very fast block times, and then there's Ethereum, and the two are just independent chains. In that world, And that's kind of the first thing. It's called, or that is already a concept that's out there. It's called based rollups. So in that world, the rollup progresses in sync with Ethereum. So the rollup always only does a new block when Ethereum also does a new block. And actually, Ethereum, in a way, builds the block for the rollup itself. So Ethereum has layer 1 transactions, but then they have the so-called blob data that includes the transactions of the rollups. But in the kind of traditional rollups, they usually kind of just build the transactions, and then sometimes later they put those transactions minutes later, 10 minutes later, all in those blobs. In those based rollups, the transactions that are in the Ethereum block are essentially immediately executed. So there's no time delay, but that on the other hand also means you cannot go faster than Ethereum. So that's kind of the first important piece of that construction that I'm proposing. And there are some attempts of this already. There are one or two based rollups. But then I'm essentially saying we need, or Ethereum should go one step further. And that is really the question of who is developing it and to what extent can you trust that, or can you trust them? So the idea here is, okay, we could have based rollups, and again, the idea or the ideal world would be that then it almost wouldn't matter if you have the asset on the L1 or the L2, they can super quickly move and they are essentially equal. In reality, if such a rollup is developed by some unknown or random team, then for developer, it's still a significant decision to say, can they trust that code? Can they trust that team? Because kind of building those rollups is a complex is a complex thing, and so you essentially have another form of fragmentation, and that is kind of this risk fragmentation that you have now. Let's say 4 or 5 different rollups. They might all be theoretically similar, but practically, let's say they're just developed by different teams, different standards of how many security audits have been done. So those are important things, and that can still mean that an asset on one chain is essentially different than an asset on another chain, because with one there's simply a higher risk of that there is some form of problem or some form of bug. So what I'm proposing in a way on top of this idea of based rollups is very simple, to say Ethereum as a community and as developers, as open source developers that currently kind of create Ethereum clients, that there should be a set of rollups that's actually developed and deployed and maintained by that very same developer process and developer community. And that would dramatically essentially improve the trust or the I mean, it's not only the trust, or it's basically saying if Ethereum would do it, then it would be done properly. So Ethereum would not deploy an L2 with some form of multisig. How it's basically currently all L2s have some form of upgrade mechanism, and that's also kind of needed because Ethereum itself is not itself is changing and will be changing, and therefore it might be necessary that you need to upgrade a rollup on top of Ethereum. Someone needs to have the right to upgrade that. And as long as, and the way Ethereum updates on itself, or Ethereum updates itself, is through those kind of hard forks that are done roughly once a year now. And here, that would be another advantage of those native rollups, or what I call native rollups. So rollups developed by Ethereum itself, that upgrade process could also be done in the same way as Ethereum updated. upgraded. So the core messages here is those rollups wouldn't have any smaller owner set like a multisig that has the right to upgrade them, but instead they would upgrade via regular Ethereum process.
Yeah, it's interesting because people always say that the layer 2s are secured by Ethereum, but basically what you're proposing, these particular layer 2s would have like much greater security just by virtue of going through the same process to even be deployed. One other piece of this is, you were proposing that there be 128 native layer 2s. Why that particular number as opposed to, for instance, a smaller number?
I mean, the goal is simply to say, or to make Ethereum block space that is in high demand, and of course with the consequence that transaction costs are really high, to create as much as possible of that block space. The number 128 comes from the limitation that Ethereum still would have even in that design. So in general, the goal would be to get that number as high as possible. So in early sharding proposals a couple of years ago, there was even talk about 1024 equivalent kind of Ethereum L1s. So I would like to go even to that number, but the bottleneck that is still there is data availability or blobs, and the 128 is would already only make sense with an increase of blob space. So as long as we have the very limited number of blobs, currently essentially just 3 per block, even the 128 couldn't really be supported. But increase of blob space is already in discussion, and with that increase, the 128 would be feasible, that number.
And why are you proposing that these be ZK rollups or zero knowledge rollups as opposed to optimistic rollups?
Right. So the big advantage of ZK is that you can much faster prove the correctness of that rollup. So in an optimistic rollup, essentially you say, okay, here's my state, and then you need to give everyone time to challenge that state. And there is a debate of how long that time should or needs to be. In the optimistic rollups we see today, let's say Optimism, Arbitrum base, they even use a time window of 7 days. You could certainly reduce that time, but you need a sufficient or you need somewhat large time. I mean, at the very least an hour, probably even a day or something like that, to give everyone time to challenge that. And that essentially means that if you want to do a transaction from the rollup back to Ethereum, you basically need to do the transaction. Then you have this state, and then you need kind of to give that time for everyone to challenge that state. And only after that time has passed, the transaction can hit Ethereum L1. In a ZK, or in a rollup where you prove correctness, the time it takes you to go back from the from the L2 to the L1 is just the time that it takes you to generate that proof. And here we are already in a range of minutes. So it's possible to say you do this transaction, you create this block, and minutes later you have this proof, and then immediately that allows you to execute the transaction on the L1. We are even on a path to be able to reduce that proof time to seconds. There is technology to create specific hardware that is just optimized to ASICs, kind of like you have ASICs for Bitcoin mining. You can have ASICs specifically for those proof generation. And if we get to that point, it would even be possible to generate the proof within a block, within the currently 12-second block time. And that would be really the ideal case, because in that world, you could send a message from, or do a transaction from the L2 or on the L2, immediately proves the correctness of this L2 state transition. And then essentially in the same block, one block later, execute that transaction on the L1. And that really kind of goes back to what my starting point was. My starting point was to say, okay, instead of having different L2s that are essentially just kind of loosely connected to Ethereum, but essentially are their own independent chains, it would for developers and for Ethereum be much better to have essentially one chain where assets and tokens and users can move extremely fast around, and you can to much larger degree even abstract away the idea of whether you are on this or kind of in those 128 rollups. The goal would be that you could completely abstract it away, that you are on a particular two of those many.
Okay, and would any of those rollups be privacy preserving or no?
Yeah, so no. So I think this so the idea here is to really just say, well, we have Ethereum L1 block space and it's in high demand, and we just want to create more of it. So it would really just have the same features of Ethereum, and I think that it also connects to one of the questions I got for the talk. What about all the other rollups that are currently being developed? And here my answer would be, it would probably mean that those rollups would need to do some things on top of just providing regular EVM block space. And here, one possible direction could absolutely be privacy preserving. So, for example, there's @stake, and there are a bunch of other rollups that go in this direction, and that would still be kind of valuable work that could or should be done beyond this proposal.
Okay, and then one other thing is, and you may have just briefly touched on this, but generally when people talk about chain abstraction, that's like designing the product in a way where the user doesn't know what chain they're using. And people typically say that creates a better user experience, but you don't seem to think that that's a good idea. So can you explain a little bit more about why that is?
Yeah, so the issue with the current rollup landscape is that because rollups have widely different security standards. So kind of on L2 beat, I think you find over 100 different rollups listed, and the term rollup really kind of means almost nothing. So the security, some have, some are just literally controlled by a single key, and others, of course, take security very serious, have various processes, have audits and so on. But if you basically now say we should abstract it away from the user, whether they are on this quite secure, extremely secure chain or on a chain that's very insecure, then kind of chain abstraction turns into risk abstraction, and that's certainly not a good thing. And of course, it leads to the situation where then, if a user is eventually affected by those risks because one rollup kind of blows up in some form, of course, then you can no longer abstract that away, and then you have to tell the user, well, sorry, you were just on a chain that was very unsecure. So long story short, chain abstraction is of course a good it would be ideal that the user doesn't have to care about that, but as long as there is no standard for security, I think it's dangerous to then abstract those risks away. And I think, again, the only way to really have or to really allow this chain abstraction is to say, okay, we have this set of rollups, those, let's say 128, that we know follow the same rigorous process that Ethereum is following, because it is developed by the same community, by the same process. And yes, then you could actually abstract it away.
All right. So in a moment, we're going to talk about the follow-on effects if this is adopted, but first, a quick word from the sponsors who make this show possible. Polkadot is the original and largest Layer 0 blockchain with over 2,000 plus developers. And the anticipated Polkadot 2.0 upgrade will be a massive accelerator for the ecosystem, upgrading the infrastructure with 8 times higher transaction throughput and twice as fast block times, perfectly tailored core time for the needs of every protocol, trustless bridges internally and into Ethereum, Cosmos, Near, Binance Smart Chain, and revised tokenomics and the implementation of a token burn to reduce inflation. Perfect for GameFi and DeFi to build, grow, and scale with one of the most active crypto communities in the space. Polkadot recently announced a partnership with Mythical Games, bringing top games like NFT Rivals with over 650,000 players and 43 million transactions to pave the way for GameFi and the Polkadot ecosystem. Get your Web3 ideas to market fast with economics that work for you. Think big, build bigger with Polkadot. Join the community at polkadot.network/ecosystem/community. Big news for DeFi traders. Robinhood Wallet, Robinhood's non-custodial wallet mobile app, has partnered with Arbitrum to make access to L2 swaps easier than ever. Enjoy gasless swaps and cross-chain swaps on Arbitrum and other networks. The best part? Robinhood Wallet takes no fees on same-chain or cross-chain swaps. Other fees may still apply. With gasless swaps, you can pay network fees with the same token you're swapping instead of ETH. Cross-chain swaps make it incredibly simple to swap crypto without any manual bridging. Download the Robinhood Wallet mobile app today on iOS or Android and join people in over 140 countries exploring Web3 with Arbitrum.
Overwhelmed trying to manage your crypto investments? Introducing iYield, a free financial planning tool for crypto natives. Unlike portfolio trackers, which just get the value of your assets, iYield reveals your full financial picture by also supporting debts, incomes, and expenses in both crypto and fiat. The dashboard compares returns from your DeFi positions side by side. This removes uncertainty and provides clarity to help you make better decisions. iYield supports a growing list of over 16,000 tokens across 16 blockchains and 40 of the top DeFi and staking protocols, as well as all fiat currencies. Ditch the spreadsheets and take control of your financial future. Get started today at iYield.com.
Back to my conversation with Martin. So one of the benefits of your proposal is that it would likely have better composability. Can you explain how composability would be improved in the system you're proposing?
Yeah, so it would allow developers to create applications where a user can do a transaction, is affecting both state on the L1 and the L2. And so, just to give an example, it would allow you to do a trade or it would, for example, allow you to bridge assets to the L2 and in the very same trade already use those assets to then do a trade on the L2. And that's quite different from today's world. And where you have to bridge, and then usually it takes at least a couple of minutes, sometimes much longer. Then you have to kind of continue the process. But it would go even further. So on the L2, the idea is that the state of the L1 of Ethereum is available. So for example, if you want to deploy some protocol on the L2 that needs to read Oracle prices, then you wouldn't need to separately kind of somehow get those in that L2. You could synchronously, or you could just read from the contracts that are on the L2. You could natively just read into the L1 space. Another, or kind of a very practical consequence of all of that is just an easy way to understand that currently this high level of composability is not given, is to just look at a protocol like Aave, where you have currently separate instances of Aave on kind of on Ethereum, but also all the big rollups. And you will find that the very same assets, let's say USDC, have quite different interest rates. So on Ethereum is currently 7%, on Base it's 12%, on Arbitrum it's 9%. And that shouldn't really happen if it was kind of one ecosystem. If it was one ecosystem, then all those rates would immediately kind of even, or you basically would have one rate, and that one rate would have the deepest liquidity. So kind of just the fact that those different rates exist show already that there's all kind of friction to move assets across those chains.
Okay, yeah, I saw in that discussion that because you had tweeted about that you were saying that there could be one unified liquidity pool on the L1 that any L2 could tap into. So basically, it would sort of be like Uniswap that was deployed on the L1 could be accessed by any of these L2s that you're proposing?
Right. So with something like Uniswap, I think it's maybe a bit harder, but even there you could say the main liquidity is on the L1. The L2 might have thin kind of buffer liquidity, I would say, where if it's a really small trade, then it doesn't need to touch L1 at all. It can basically just take the price from the L1 and kind of and use some form of buffers to execute this trade immediately on the L2. But if the trade is large enough that it kind of needs the L1 liquidity, then it would need to, then you could say all the trades that are, or all the buys and the sells that kind of match each other, that you can kind of directly settle on the L2. But the remainder, if there's more buying or more selling, then the remainder you would do settle in one transaction into the L1. So on the
Okay, yeah, it definitely would be a big benefit, I think, to a lot of users. So you also said that your proposal could be implemented without a single change to Ethereum. And if that's the case, then it sort of seems the community just would need to get behind this. So I was wondering what the reaction has been to your proposal.
Yeah, so maybe just to first comment on the that it's possible without change. So yes, it is possible without change to create base rollups, and of course it is possible for the Ethereum developer community to deploy those. Of course, if Ethereum would develop them itself, then there are changes to the to Ethereum itself that could be done that would make this proposal even much stronger. So there are just one idea or one concept is that the idea would be that on those L2s you would make sure that they have distinct addresses. So currently you can have the same address on different L2s, and that can create some form of problems and confusion. So, well, there is already a proposal to have chain specific addresses, and if we are going this route, then of course it would be nice if it's actually possible to use your L2 address to make a call into L1. And there are some details that where small improvements or small changes to Ethereum could make this proposal even stronger. Now, to your question on the reception, I think it's mixed. So I think it was certainly a proposal. It's certainly not it's certainly not the mainstream Ethereum roadmap yet. So currently, the idea is still okay. We will just have all those kind of external layer 2s, and maybe even some will decide to be based, so kind of to use Ethereum as a sequencer instead of having their own sequencer. And yes, I'm now going a step beyond and I'm saying that's not enough. That will not solve this fragmentation that, in my view, Ethereum is suffering from. Yeah, I got a bunch of people saying that's exactly right. That's exactly what we need. But overall, I remain somewhat, or it currently doesn't look like that this proposal will get kind of enough support for it to be implemented. But I will certainly, at least for a while, try to push it.
And what is the opposition?
I hardly have seen really arguments against it. other than, existing L2s might not be happy about it, or I have not really seen argument against it, but kind of just not enough support. So I mean, just in general for Ethereum, there are hundreds of open proposals of how to improve or how to change Ethereum, and quite often the default thing is not necessarily that a proposal faces specific opposition, that someone says that's for those and that reason bad. Kind of the default reason why a proposal gets not implemented is simply because it doesn't get enough kind of support or attention. So I think that's really the key question. Can you get enough momentum behind it, and then there's a chance that it will be implemented. Otherwise, it will end up in the long list of not implemented ideas.
Well, as you mentioned, there are the only opposition that you've seen is from existing L2s, or I don't know if it's from them, but it's about the fact that these other ones exist. And that's the only kind of natural constituency that I can think of that would be against this proposal. So let's say that it were to be implemented. What effect do you think it would have on these existing L2s?
Yeah, I mean, I think as said previously, they would certainly need it to do some form of innovation beyond offering regular Ethereum EVM block space, because if you just do that, then people will probably kind of just say, okay, well, here's Ethereum block space directly coming from Ethereum, super nicely connected to Ethereum layer 1. Sure, I will go there. Why should I in a way use a smaller ecosystem or kind of have some form of additional platform risk, unless I get a specific upside beyond just having EVM block space.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we'll just have to see how it happens. Do you have any plans for trying to drum up more support, or was it just the presentation? Or
I think I will see. I mean, there is certainly I think there is a larger kind of debate in Ethereum whether or not Ethereum is on the right track. Certainly, people have noticed that Ether has kind of somewhat underperformed, at least in relationship to other, let's say to Bitcoin and a few other blockchains. I think, from my perspective, a big challenge for Ethereum is that it's not obvious, or it's, in my view, it's not clear what Ethereum wants to be. And there is one side that tries to a little bit go the Bitcoin route and essentially say Ether is money. And if that's your if that's your idea of why Ethereum should be valuable, because it's used as money and kind of programmable money, all those ideas, then it almost doesn't matter that much how much capacity the blockchain offers and what kind of, let's say, the total transaction fees are, because then you can always say, okay, well, Bitcoin has even way less capacity and they are super successful with kind of just being money in a way, or just claiming to be store of value and something like that. So if that's your goal, then there's really not, that maybe not really that interesting often proposal. But kind of I'm more in the camp of saying Ethereum main goal should be to be a platform for developers, where developers know, okay, this is a credible, neutral platform. I can build applications here that last, or can last for long time, for decades. And I don't have the risk that the platform will just be turned off or just kind of changes in significant ways. And in that world, of course, the biggest problem is that Ethereum so far scales poorly, or kind of has reached its capacity since a long time, and we need ways to improve the capacity, and again, ideally to do so without losing the network effects of what makes Ethereum already attractive, and that's really kind of the liquidity and the contracts and kind of everything that is happening on L1. So in my view, if there would be consensus to say Ethereum really kind of what counts is how many transactions is Ethereum able to process, how many fees is Ethereum generating in total out of all those transactions, and that's really kind of also what gives Ether value, because let's say those transaction fees are burned and in some form that is what defines Ether. Then I think it would be much clearer to say, well, that's at least a direction we need to go, and we cannot just outsource all of that additional block space creation to third parties, essentially, which are essentially current L2s. We need to do that ourselves.
And so actually, one last question. It sounds like you are in the camp of L2s being parasitic to Ethereum. Would that be correct?
Well, I mean, not really, because I would say, I think, I would say Ethereum L2s created the value, and therefore it's totally fair that they captured the value. So I would just say, kind of, if Ethereum wants to capture value from L2s, it needs to develop them and deploy them itself. And Ethereum, I would say Ethereum is not parasitic to L2s. So it is not capturing the value they created, but that's simply how it should be. And if Ethereum wants to capture value from L2s, then it needs to also do the work.
Okay, well, I would say that means that you do think that they're parasitic, but anyway, well, Martin, it's been really fun chatting with you. Where can people learn more about you and your work?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on Twitter, at least. Well, always, if I have something new to push, then I'm using Twitter as the main medium.
And your handle is?
Yeah, Köppelmann. So KOEPPELMANN.
Okay, perfect. It's been a pleasure having you on Unchained.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us today. To learn more about Martin and his proposal for Ethereum-native Layer 2s, check out the show notes for this episode. Unchained is produced by me, Laura Shin, with help from Matt Pilger, Juan Urbanovich, Megan Gavis, Pam Majumdar, and Mark Kuria. Thanks for listening. Unchained is now a part of the CoinDesk Podcast Network. For the latest in digital assets, check out Markets Daily, 5 days a week, with host Noel Atchison. Follow the CoinDesk Podcast Network for some of the best shows in crypto.